Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. We are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And feel free to put in any comments into the chat about prehistoric to current animal life. So let's dive back into the Mesozoic era. From Sci News, new prehistoric crocodile identified. Lemmissuchus obtusidens. Obtusidens. Let's see if this really is a crocodile because it could be existing much longer before any species of crocodile existed, considering the first true crocodiles only appear around 30 million years ago during the first 4 million years of the Oligocene epoch during the Cenozoic era, which was about 36 million years after the dinosaurs went extinct. So, an international team of paleontologists has identified a new teleosaur. Yeah, not a crocodile. And named it after Ian Lemmy Kilmeister, frontman of the band Motorhead. Oh, think I was mixing it up with like another paleontologist. Okay, no idea. Oh, well, this is definitely a very unique sort of teleosaur look, but it shares a lot of teleosaur characteristics when looking at the skull, even the more slim type of a body in general. But that distinct um, skull shape, like it's almost like a garrel to an extent, but at the same time, garrels do not have a very wide back or bottom jaw. Well, not bottom jaw. Back part of the skull. Like it tends to stay quite sleek. I mean, obviously, it does somewhat become a little wider in diameter as you head towards like the core of the skull structure, but this is quite immense. I wonder what he's feeding on. It looks like a deer leg, but very likely it's probably some species of marine reptile or it's a dinosaur. But a marine reptile, if it's a leg, is going to look like a fin, most likely. You did have different species of marine crocodilomorphs known as the metrorhynchids and other closely related families that this animal would have competed for food with and occasionally even preyed on. But question is, how large is this creature? Just referring to the telesaur in general. So Lemmissuchus obtusidens, Lemmy's blunted tooth crocodile. Oh, that's an interesting description, or it fits it. Lived around 164 million years ago during the Middle Jurassic epoch. So this is after certain species of marine crocodilomorphs were existing during the mid and early Jurassic, but they would still continue into the late Jurassic period, so upwards of like 143 million years ago. And this is also after species of dinosaurs on land like Megalosaurus and Cetiosaurus. So the prehistoric beast was a sea-going member of an extinct group called teleosaurs, common during the Jurassic, but only distantly related to modern crocodiles. They're pretty far off in the crocodilomorph family tree or pseudosuchian family tree that as well the crocodilians of today also belong to, but they are not closely related. It inhabited shallow seawaters around the coast of land that would become modern day Europe. It inhabited the body of Lemnossuchus obtusidens was almost 20 feet or 6 meters long, with the skull measuring more than 3 feet or 1 meter. That's not bad for a species of crocodilomorph, marine crocodilomorph at this point in the Jurassic. They would become larger and slightly later into the Jurassic as well. But 20 feet is like a larger, medium sized species. Um, let's see. Okay, let's bring up a species of dinosaur. Why, Henvenator. Wiehenvenator.
Why are you bringing up a dinosaur when we're talking about a crocodilomorph?
I just think it's a good combination. Even when it comes to me and talking about certain marine creatures, and honestly, I would say all of them. Like if you're watching a certain documentary, it really helps when they add in different species of terrestrial dinosaurs that were existing at the time, especially like medium to larger species. Okay, So, this is a species of megalosaur that inhabited Europe about 166 million years ago. So, it might have been slightly before the Lemmiasuchus, but it also could have possibly coexisted with it towards the later part of its reign. Possibly what you have here is a dead Cetiosaurus, like on the banks of England or different parts of Switzerland or Germany at this point in the Jurassic. Now, there's a problem. What is a dromaeosaur doing here? This kind will not evolve until the very beginning of the Cretaceous, like somewhere between 140 and 143 million years ago. There were certain prototypes that were existing back in the Jurassic, but not to this type of a look. In fact, you have it where certain species of smaller theropods like Compsognathus still haven't evolved yet. There was Procompsognathus, which existed much earlier in time, like towards the early Jurassic over 200 million years ago. And that's far before Wyvenator would have evolved. The predator was one of the larger species of the Jurassic at this point, at least on land. It reached somewhere around 20 to 25 feet in length and probably weighed upwards of a ton, or pushing somewhere between 6 to 7.8 meters and probably weighing in at about 950 kilograms. So likely feeding on smaller individuals of Cetiosaurus, but this seems to simply depict either a sick or an older individual that died. Also, I think it's pretty realistic with just the um, either floodplain. Yeah, it's possibly a floodplain and not necessarily the beach. But it does share actually, it shares more characteristics with, Torvosaurus, and I'm going to, correct my sizing on this animal. It's actually much larger. It could possibly be a bit bigger than Megalosaurus. So this creature was pushing around 30 feet in length or possibly 9 meters and, probably weighed in at 2 to 3 tons. So it was a massive creature. It has similar bones that are pretty similar in length to Torvosaurus. It also belongs to the same family of theropod dinosaurs that Torvosaurus tanneri belonged to as well, but Torvosaurus tanneri doesn't evolve until much later into the Jurassic. Um, what was it? Oh, if you're looking at the skull of this creature, it is very similar to Torvosaurus, but it lived much earlier before that genus. Torvosaurus doesn't really pop up in the fossil record until about 153 million years ago. And this creature was also inhabiting Europe over 10 million years prior. However, we don't find necessarily Torvosaurus also in the same region that we find Wyvenator. Wyvenator was existing much further north compared to Torvosaurus, which was inhabiting Portugal, possibly Spain during the late Jurassic, but not necessarily into Central Europe. Certainly was possible. And also over in the United States.
Okay, that guy has the
Um,
ability to bend his neck.
Yeah, but I think this is supposed to represent a megalosaurus, not necessarily a wyvenator. They
So
are
is
closely
Wyvenator a huge Jurassic megalosaurid?
e maybe the time before we brought it up and it was supposed to be a wyvenator, but it might represent megalosaurus because megalosaurus has a bit more of like a broader jaw structure compared to torvosaurus, even though torvus not torvosaurus, well, him too, but wyvenator. I'd say Wyvenator has a bit more of like a longer, sleek sort of a skull, though approaching the length of Megalosaurus. I do wonder who this small theropod is in the background. He just seems to be sitting and biding his time. Those are small ramphorhynchid pterosaurs that are flying around the Wyvenator or Megalosaurus. And I'm guessing he's also munching on another Cetiosaur, but it could be a species of Stegosaur in the region. There were also smaller ornithopods at this point, but not to that size. This is far too large for any species of ornithopod during this part of the Jurassic. That's also a good reconstruction. Though I think it's showing his teeth slightly, but that could just be the lip. Yeah, I mean, I like the coloration. They even added osteoderms towards the back, which is interesting because when referring to different members of Megalosauroideae, It's not usually a characteristic that on many reconstructions is present. This is something that tends to be uh, found a lot more in different species of Allosauroideae. So this is quite odd. Even along the tail, there are literally thagomizers, I guess, approaching the midsection. That's interesting. But yeah, the upper skull looks good, even though small horn-like projections. What is odd or off for any species of dinosaur, but you do have those very nutty individuals, or they're just of low intelligence.
That he's walking on lava?
Yeah, or he just wants to call it quits. It's very possible. Um, this could have occurred, but for most individuals, they would have avoided any major volcanic areas. There's really no benefit. They would just cook to death.
I think it's Caliga Garcia says hi.
Well, hello, fellow theropod. And what's another thing? Yeah, I mean, I also like how they kind of gave this individual a bit of a wider sort of, um, I guess, sort of a presence, but his arms seem a bit smaller compared to other reconstructions. They still added a bit of muscle to them. Certain species of megalosaurs, like Megalosaurus itself, also had much longer arms compared to their body size, and I think even Torvosaurus did. I would say it looks a little stocky here compared to many species of theropod dinosaurs in general. In fact, it seems to have a bit more in common with the Spinosaurs. And also, the Spinosaurs are members of Megalosauroideae. So that is actually quite a interesting common mutation of the two. Very thick neck, however. Okay, let's head back to the article. It's so referring to the Lemmiscucus crocodilomorph. Its broad snout and large blunt teeth evolved for crushing shelled prey such as turtles. That's interesting. They're making it out like this creature has a very wide jaw structure, and it doesn't. I mean, it still could likely crush certain smaller species of turtles, but depending on the species, they're quite robust. You can even watch different videos of, or just footage of alligators going after maybe like red slider turtles or certain other species, maybe even yellow colored turtles. And alligators have quite a robust jaw structure, but it takes quite a few chomps to finally get through the turtle. So in contrast to its,
Is that like how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Tootsie Pop?
um,
1, 2.
it's not hitting me what that looks like, but um,
A lollipop?
oh, okay. Yeah, I would say the alligators is probably more complicated because I would assume sometimes that the alligator has to be careful and not break too many of its teeth in the process. Like also how um, far down are the teeth when it comes to bringing in some of the, I guess, just new teeth, considering alligators, crocodiles, sharks are consistently regrowing their teeth or flushing out their old ones. So, in contrast to its close relatives that had longer snouts and thinner teeth for catching fish. Well, that's odd because in the description or the picture, it makes it out like it has a very long, thin snout, which is a teleosaur trait. But supposedly it doesn't, and it actually looks like the bottom part of the skull. So, with a meter long skull or 3.3 feet and a total length of
Wait,
5.8,
wait. When where's its name at? Is this it?
Limasuchus obtusidens.
Oh, stop it. Uh, stop.
I mean, it's common in many species of marine crocodilomorphs. They tend to have more sleek jaw structures, and it's really the terrestrial species and semi-aquatic species on land that would have broader snouts. So it would have been one of the biggest coastal predators of its time. Oh, total length of 5.8 meters. So that's pushing somewhere around 18 feet. Said lead author Dr. Michaela Johnson, a paleontologist at the University of Edinburgh. Yeah, that's at least by the side angle. it doesn't seem to have a very broad snout. It's still a good reconstruction. Whoa, okay, nope. I would not want this creature munching on turtles. That is nuts, in my opinion, to have created that type of a theory for this creature. What is it, a hatchling? Okay, if they claimed it was a hatchling predator, which in many cases, um, you could have had several instances where the hatchlings just left to the sea and they were feeding on a variety of them. But outside of that, a full-grown turtle? No, that would risk fracturing its entire skull. So it's likely feeding on different species of smaller fish. Maybe though there have been instances where there have been larger fish that have been consumed by these thinner snouted crocodilomorphs. Even different species of birds today are capable of swallowing extremely large fish whole. What that specific thin-snouted bird is that's very well renowned, at least over in like Thailand, certain parts of China, Southeast Asia in general, for swallowing fish that seem to be the size of their whole core. Um, let's see, who is it? Not, no, I'm not thinking of the bird. I was trying to think of other crocodilomorphs. Yeah. Um, Sarcosuchus, even though that's quite a bit of a stretch, but would be a better predator that's suited for going after smaller species of turtles, or just regular turtles you would find on land. So the specimen was dug up by fossil collectors in the early 20th century from a clay pit quarry near Peterborough, Cambridgeshire, UK. Dr. Johnson and co-authors found that the fossil had been classified incorrectly with other sea crocodiles from the quarries at Peterborough, and it needed a scientific name. Well, I think um I think what he's trying to or what they are trying to say here is that it already had a scientific name, like a genus and a species, but it was put in with the wrong family, possibly. So that would just simply mean that it doesn't necessarily need a new name by genus or species point, but it needs a new subfamily name or needs to be just put elsewhere in the taxonomic tree of pseudosuchians. Most of these creatures were likely preying on different species of ammonites or the close relatives of cephalopods in the ocean, feeding on different species of fish, possibly smaller crocodilomorphs, even smaller plesiosaurs at the time, considering plesiosaurs, for the most part, didn't really have any armor, at least on their necks, which made them very vulnerable targets. But they were also larger than certain species of crocodilomorphs in many cases. So it can be difficult to identify new species as we are normally working with incomplete fossil skeletons. Following careful anatomical comparison and by referring to the main specimen held at the Natural History Museum, London, we could see that most of the previous finds were actually from relatives of this croc rather than the species itself. And we were able to assign a new name. Yeah, I think this has been occurring with many species of prehistoric animals recently. Okay, let's bring up another creature. Just plesiosaurus. So,
JUST.
um, what? Um,
You said just plesiosaurs.
oh, like it sounded like the just was the genus. So
Wait, do it again.
Plesiosaur, and also specifically plesiosaurus, not just plesiosaur.
Got it.
Because plesiosaur basically refers to every single species of long-necked um, plesiosaur marine reptile that has existed, or members of Plesiosauroidea, or plesiosauromorph. There are different species or lineages of long-necked marine reptiles that existed during the Mesozoic era, especially the Triassic, that had long necks but were not plesiosaurs, and also were not members of specifically Plesiosauridae. Who was it? You actually had different species of pliosaurs that would have evolved longer necks. Technically, it is a in quote plesiosauromorph, but they're not true plesiosaurs, long neck plesiosaurs. Okay, so is this specifically him? This has a much wider skull compared to certain other illustrations and a somewhat thicker neck too. This seems to be more of an elasmosaurid. I wouldn't necessarily say a plesiosaur itself. However, there are certain earlier plesiosaurs back from the Jurassic. So this is somewhere between 160 and 165 million years ago, close to the time of the Limasuchus species of crocodilomorph that has been discovered. However, I think that was maybe around 164 million years ago. So pushing around the same time. These creatures really were only feeding on different species of fish. Their teeth were not suited for crushing really any bone. They had to be quite careful. Though they could have come into contact with different species of softer shelled ammonites and
I like him.
definitely utilize them as a necessary prey source. Yeah, he's not bad. It is also quite interesting as to where the eye sockets are placed within the species, but also just the conical teeth are very distinct. They are somewhat similar in position to different species of the long-skulled pliosaurs that would occasionally have hunted the plesiosaurs during the Jurassic and early Cretaceous periods. And then later on, the mosasaurs would take over. But mosasaurs have a very different jaw structure compared to the pliosaurs or the plesiosaurs. Though the plesiosaurs, not plesiosaurs, pliosaurs were more capable of crushing bone to an extent. Plesiosaurs were simply um, just grabbing fish and swallowing them whole. These animals did not have the ability to chew their food. Neither did the pliosaurs, and nor did the marine crocodilomorphs. It's actually not a bad reconstruction. And yes, despite the ammonites inhabiting the ocean, you would have had it where in many instances these animals would prey on different species of squids, similar to different species of pinnipeds today. Like by pinnipeds, I mean different species of seals, and as well different species of marine birds like penguins, and occasionally different species of birds that dive for their fish or squid intake.
Here, I like this.
Yeah, there has been a massive transformation. I mean, it really isn't bad if you look at it in the 1840s, just by the immediate guess as to how these animals would have looked like. I think it's an extraordinary jump into theory. Um, so, um, yeah, I'm quite grateful for their reconstructions. And then, yeah, by the 1980s, it was not too far from today's. You're just simply missing a tail fluke, a little too flexible of a neck, also a bit too skinny in some instances, depending on the species. Certain species of plesiosaurs would have had much broader neck structures compared to others that would have been much more sleek. And also, the fins might be a bit thin, especially as you head towards the tips. They're a bit broader on, in fact, many species. It's kind of like when we're looking at the older reconstructions of the pterosaurs or the winged reptiles that coexisted with the dinosaurs. They're also very closely related to the dinosaurs. They were originally reconstructed for, well over, I'd say, like, back into the 1800s. So for nearly 200 years, having very thin wing membranes. Then later on, it was, or more analysis found that these creatures would have contained quite wide wing membranes compared to their body size. So just like the flippers on the different species of plesiosaurs, and not just the plesiosaurs, the pliosaurs, the mosasaurs, and other different lineages of sauropterygian, or basically aquatic archosaurs. So they are related to the dinosaurs, they're just quite far off in the family tree. And in many instances, these animals would have been cold blooded. Um, though there might have been certain species, considering we have found some inhabiting the Antarctic during the Cretaceous, and also during a time when Antarctica was experiencing a bit of a cooling event, also that they would have contained fat or blubber, as well as like different species of ichthyosaurs. So it is a bit of a question in some instances if they were warm blooded. Yeah, that was a good reconstruction. This is too. I like the murky, maybe not exactly murky, but Trying to think of the other word for it. Just the overall look, I think it's, very matching. He's got a problem. It's overall just too thin in general. It almost looks like a certain toy to an extent, but the flippers are far too skinny compared to, um, like, even when you're looking at the upper part of the fin towards the shoulder blade, it looks like it's sinking into the body. That's quite odd. Looks like they're even giving it armor, though. We have found on the sides of plesiosaurs evidence of armor occurring. He also doesn't have a tail fluke. That's an issue. The tail out. Besides that, it's fine. Um, yeah, I guess his tooth structure is okay. This one seems a bit better. Even his odd facial expression is likely very realistic.
That would be incredibly scary coming at you.
Yeah, the plesiosaurs, at least the later species, you head back into the Jurassic, like between 180 and 190 million years ago, you run into certain species of plesiosaurs that could likely feed on you or just simply hunt you down. Also preying on other species of plesiosaurs, even ichthyosaurs at the time. Then by 170 million years ago, they were pretty docile to most lineages of marine reptiles, even their own kind. There simply wasn't really a need to be aggressive.
Caliga Garcia says, scary.
Yeah, I think in some cases he just looks like a bit of an intimidating sort of dumb marine reptile. But well, maybe not necessarily intimidating. He's just maybe a bit shocked that he hasn't come across any shoals of fish. Okay, let's head, I guess, to the next article. That is a completely different lineage of plesiosaur. I don't believe that's plesiosaurus. The body structure, especially like around the core, bit too squarish. Plesiosaurus was still round, like many species of plesiosaurs in general. So from Sci News, Corythoraptor jacobsi, new species of bird-like dinosaur discovered in China. Okay, so this is commemorating the original discovery of this theropod.
Caliga Garcia said, it looks like a shark with a giraffe's head.
Huh. I actually haven't thought of that type of a description. I think maybe a sauropod neck, or maybe we're trying to go after a giraffe neck because we're referring to the head. I mean, giraffes do have very small heads compared to their body size. They are, in a ways, like the sauropods of the modern day. Then again, they're not because sauropods were not exactly lightly built or um, delicate in a way, whereas giraffes are. Um, but looking at a giraffe and a plesiosaur skull, I guess comparing them to their body size, yeah, it is in that way quite similar. But if you're looking at the morphology or the structure in general, it's very different. They do both, however, have front teeth. So an international team of paleontologists has identified from an almost complete skeleton found in China a massive oviraptor dinosaur with a toothless beak and a distinct cassowary-like crest atop its head. This isn't necessarily a giant species of oviraptorid, but it's definitely not the smallest. It's for certain towers over species like oviraptor itself. Even who is it over in Anzu from North America, like Montana, during the late Cretaceous about 68 million years ago, so possibly coexisting with T Rex. It's slightly larger than. So here they are. Yeah, this creature is probably pushing a little over 12 feet in length or approaching 4 meters.
So these would take down a cassowary.
I wonder because I would say that would be a very heavily built species of oviraptor, and I would, well, technically, I would assume that for many species of theropod dinosaurs, but cassowaries have such powerful legs that they are capable of breaking the legs of a person. I do wonder, however, if that's simply a person that has very weak ligaments, tendons, muscles in general. How would it kick from a cassowary and also with a lot of power put behind it? Handle a person that has been training and has powerful tendons, muscles, ligaments? That's a big question.
How would it handle a person?
Well, even smaller birds are very robust in general, so I wouldn't be surprised if someone really tried to put in a powerful kick to a cassowary. Wouldn't probably have much of an impact. Now, onto their leg, because I'm thinking of the rib cage in general, like just the overall core. Yeah, I mean, it's not used to something hitting it even on the thigh, or maybe trying to sever it in that instance, or towards like the knee region. So yeah, I think it would be quite a shock. And what I mean by that is a bit of pain. So named Corythoraptor jacobsi, the new discovered dinosaur belongs to Oviraptoridae, a group of bird-like herbivorous and omnivorous dinosaurs. It does seem that oviraptors in general, they also did not contain teeth. There is also a lot of different species of avian theropod dinosaurs, referring to the birds that are carnivores, but they don't have teeth. But when you look at their beaks a lot of the time, they tend to be somewhat curved downwards or hooked, like that of a hawk or an eagle. And then there are those species of carnivorous birds that have a very straight, pointed beak, much like the different species of pterosaurs, especially the Asdarchids. But if you're looking at like Malibu storks over in different parts of Africa or other stork species from Europe, they have that distinct sort of a bill plan, as well as like the great blue herons of North America. So the ancient creature is thought to have lived approximately 72 million years ago. Its fossilized skeleton, including a skull and a lower jaw, was found in the Nenchung Formation beds near Gansu City, Jiangxi province. Yeah, a lot of different species of theropods, in fact, certain species of hadrosaurs or duckbill dinosaurs are discovered here. But when looking at the different species,
Kelly Garcia asks, "Do you know the book Stone Girl, Bone Girl, Bond Girl? Is it Stone Girl or and Bone Girl or Stone Girl, Bond Girl?"
no, I haven't heard of either one. Also, when looking at the beak structure of oviraptorids like Corythoraptor, it's very dull compared to different species of carnivorous, I'd say smaller carnivorous theropod dinosaurs in general that had beaks. And I'm going to include the members of the Paravest lineage, like the birds, for instance. They seem to have a bit more in common, slightly, with like different species of terror birds that would inhabit the later Cenozoic era or the time of mammals.
It's about Mary Anning.
Oh, no, I have not, but I'm very familiar with Mary Anning's discoveries over in England during the 1800s. She described different species of ichthyosaurs, different species of long-necked plesiosaurs. She had a huge impact on paleontology, including describing different species of ammonites, I think even different species of Jurassic fish, also focusing really on the Jurassic, or between, I believe, 160 and 170 million years ago. She might have found certain types of fossils or organisms from further back into the Mesozoic. Possibly she came across certain trilobites, but I could be mistaking it for those discoveries made for another paleontologist. It's also referring to a completely different era, the Proterozoic. I don't know of any species of dinosaurs she came upon. I mean, obviously, at the time, you had different animals such as iguanodon and megalosaurs, where those are the top two that were having a lot of emphasis being done on them at the time. Like, this was, like, back in the, 1830s, 1840s, so close to the time basically around the time that you had, like, the Reverend Edward Hitchcock over in New England of the United States making astounding discoveries. Well, he's having debates or, major arguments with, not really discussions, unfortunately, but with scientists over in England, not specifically Mary Anning, but about dinosaurs having a very intelligent, even somewhat feather-like, non-scaly, or at least slow, unintelligent sort of a behavior. And actually, I think I jumbled the description on what he was doing. Basically, certain paleontologists over in England were trying to disavow the Reverend Edward Hitchcock's theory on dinosaurs being intelligent, in some cases feathered, quick, um, non cold blooded animals. But yeah, Mary Anning,
I like that they
focusing,
are non-cold blooded.
yeah, they were trying to put down that theory. But yeah, she did quite a bit. It was interesting. I was actually kind of surprised that different paleontologists from England were kind of pushing like away some of her, not all of them, but some of her theories on the different species of marine reptiles that she had discovered. I kind of wonder who specifically was doing that because I don't necessarily recall like the William Buckland or Richard Owen getting in the middle of it. Because I think there were certain other paleontologists that were actually commemorating her or congratulating her discoveries. So the specimen was analyzed by Professor Lu Hun Chang, a paleontologist with the Institute of Geology in Beijing, and his colleagues from China, Slovak Republic, South Korea, and Japan. It's an interesting combination. The histological study revealed that the specimen was probably at least 8 years old, but still not a fully grown individual. Oh, yeah, I remember reading about this. They had found the Corythoraptor, but it seemed to be a juvenile. I also want to correct myself on another species of dinosaur. Let's, in fact, bring him back. So, the Brachyceratops. Brachyceratopus.
This was yesterday, right?
No, it was like a couple days back. I don't think we brought up any ceratopsians yesterday. I might have mentioned them, but I don't think we brought up any. Definitely other ornithischians. Okay, so I think I mentioned that Brachyceratops and Ceratops were both like around the same time, same size. Ceratops was probably around 3 to 4 feet in length, or barely reaching over 1.2 meters. Whereas Brachyceratops, it's interesting. So it seems to be with the individual that was discovered that it possibly reached somewhere around 13 feet in length or pushing around 4 meters.
Well, that's
This
different.
this one seems a bit longer. I mean, a bit shorter. There might have been a smaller juvenile, but apparently, when it came to the overall just the analysis on the body, it seems that the Brachyceratops that was discovered is a juvenile and it's not fully grown. And it is a member of the Centrosaur lineage of ceratopsians. It is not a leptoceratopsid. The Ceracinops was a leptoceratopsid, and it's very common for different species of leptoceratopsids to be around 3 to 5 feet in length. I think in some cases even smaller, or pushing somewhere between 1 to 1.5, 1.6 meters. So, I think this might be a specific paleontologist from Germany. He described many species of dinosaurs, but like back in the early 1900s. Gosh, it's not hitting me who this is at the moment. He also collaborated with at least 3 or 4 other paleontologists at the time that also helped describe other species too. Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up. A very centrosaur sort of look too. Is there also like um a like a depiction with muscle and tissue, skin, eyeballs? Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at the nasal horn of this animal, it's very centrosaur like. However, you did have different species of chasmosaurs, so the other major lineage of ceratopsidae. So centrosaurs are also part of ceratopsidae as well. There we go. Here he is. So this is possibly like a more adult depiction of the animal. They're giving it a much more elongated sort of a nasal horn, but it's very centrosaur like, though shorter than many species. I guess what's not too surprising is they gave it quite a stocky frame. I do think the back legs might be a little too wide or thick, and that they should be a bit more elongated. So, yeah, this isn't necessarily a bad reconstruction for a hatchling centrosaur or a hatchling brachioceratops, especially when giving it a much more leaner sort of a look. I do think the horns, like, they should barely be protruding at this point and not this far up the um, just not this far from protruding from the main part of the skull, and this wide either. And the frill is also far too large compared to its body size at this point. To me, this seems to be a hatchling that appeared out of the egg maybe a couple weeks beforehand. So it's very possible with this type of a species of ornithischian dinosaur, and specifically of the ceratopsids, when they were first born, they probably didn't weigh in many cases much more than um 20, I'd say 15 to 20 pounds, maybe even less, or pushing somewhere around 7 to maybe 9 kilograms. They were quite small. You possibly had it where there were also maybe 15 to 20 eggs in a single nest. And there would have been several nests amongst each other. So it's very likely with the different species of centrosaurs that the mothers would have taken care of their young. Slightly, though. At least when it comes to feeding, not so much. The youngsters, it seemed, with many species of dinosaurs in general, or the lineages overall, would have been able to feed themselves.
Calico Garcia said that person likes the background behind you.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, he Highland, I'd say orcs in general, they love dinosaurs.
Could be referring to all your Muay Thai pads.
Oh yeah, actually, it's to keep away the trilobites.
The trilobites?
Yeah, they tend to if I guess no, it's not a. I guess that's not good intimidation tactic for them. Considering, first of all, they're marine or aquatic, so they're unlikely going to come into contact with anything from the land, and they're mostly just scavenging. And well, actually, no, I think in some instances recently that there might be evidence for um, major predatory behavior in trilobites. Unless it was a specific species that I'm thinking of. And I'm thinking of a species that was living somewhere between 350 and 500 million years ago. And I know that is consisting of, in some cases, three different time periods. So that's not very specific. I need to go see what that trilobite was. Um, see. It's possible that these animals might have consisted of like porcupine quill like feathers, but for most centrosaurs in general, there doesn't seem to be much evidence for of that. There seems to be that seems to be more of a chasmosaur trait, or at least occurring on animals like possibly Styracosaurus. So let's head back to the Corythoraptor. According to the team, Corythoraptor jacobsi had a highly developed cassowary-like skull crest, a casque, and a long neck. Yeah, that is what makes Corythoraptor really its own thing, is that it has one of the longest necks compared to its body size of any species of oviraptorid. Oviraptorosaurs, however, Gigantoraptor had a very long neck. And that's putting aside its overall length, which was pushing somewhere around 25 to 30 feet, or probably around 7.8 to 9 meters. It just simply had a long neck as well, yet a much shorter, actually barely a crest. It's possible that Gigantoraptor didn't really even have a crest, or it's barely lifted above the skull. Corythoraptor seems to have the largest crest compared to its body size of any species of oviraptor that has been discovered. Morphologically similar to those of modern flightless cassowary birds. I think there has been some debate on Corythoraptor whether or not they might have used their crest for combat. It would be very strange amongst the oviraptor lineage in general, considering there doesn't really seem to be A lot of, I'd say, possibilities for this to have occurred, considering they were not really suited for combat. This isn't like looking at a Pachycephalosaurus dome or even different species of horned dinosaurs like the ceratopsians and their horn structures. Who else? Even certain species of theropods with much broader skulls have been theorized to have been able to headbutt each other in combat. But this doesn't seem to be the case with the Oviraptorosaurs. The cast was likely covered by outer keratinous sheath. The shell like outer layer of the casque is approximately 2 to 3 millimeters thick in the cassowary and 2 millimeters thick in Corythoraptor jacobsi. Oh, come on. Well, apparently, um, you could say, I mean, this is over what, 68 million years prior? So that's okay. Oh, yeah. So Corythoraptor was existing over in northern China around the very end of the Cretaceous during the last, I'd say, 2 million years. So they hypothesized the skull crest of Corythoraptor jacobsi was a multifunction structure utilized in display, communication, and probably expression of the fitness during mating seasons. That is quite odd that the crest of the cassowary is thicker than the Corythoraptors. It's like, why? I mean, the cassowary doesn't really have any natural predators. Um, well, okay. I mean, putting aside people, there's nothing really for the most part that hunts it, at least since the Pleistocene, it seems. Not including also like their chicks, even though that would technically count. Um, why would it be thicker? I just don't see the explanation for that. Whereas Corythoraptor is having to deal with smaller tyrannosaurs at the time, different species of dromaeosaurs, different species of larger pterosaurs. So, um, you would assume it would have had a thicker crest if it's going to be used for combat at all.
Elliot Garcia said 60 million. Whoa, what are we talking about?
68 million years back. No, this was before the Cenozoic era. This is a very complete specimen of the Corythoraptor. Wow. Yeah, look, the whole skull is complete, but even with most of the body in general, it's definitely one of these just messy sort of
Oh, where all the bones fall together?
specimens, but it's still quite complete. I mean, it looks really good. Definitely that distinct East Asian late Cretaceous sediment look. Especially over in different parts of Mongolia where we find other oviraptor specimens and where they're containing their nests. In fact, I think most oviraptors tend to be quite complete. Not entirely sure with Gigantoraptor, however. I think it is possible. Okay, not the whole crest is there, but there's enough to conclude how large it would be. It's quite astounding.
It is always amazing when the bones end up, though, just piled up like that, and the person has to go put them all together.
Um, well, I guess see where specifically they're aligned.
Not just that,
Yeah, I mean,
the difficulty I saw you have cleaning them.
well, yeah, that too.
It's
And try not to scratch them. That's a decent amount of the crest. So the cassowary-like crest in the skull is similar to the casque of cassowaries, which serves as a socio-sexual role and functions in visual and acoustic display. It is therefore reasonable to assume that the cassowary-like crest of Corythoraptor jacobsi was probably utilized in a similar way. Professor Hung Chang and co-authors explained. The sharp claw and long neck of Corythoraptor jacobsi may also indicate that its living behavior is perhaps similar to the modern flightless cassowary. Let's see. Okay, then let's bring up another ceratopsian. So Pentaceratops, Pentac. Also, the specific species. What was it? Is it Fernenstis? Fernasas. Oh, nothing pop up. Hmm. Oh, okay. The Aquilonius. So Aquil. There we go. I think this one is a little up for debate, but it seems to have more validity than another specimen or another species further back with I think it was the Pentaceratops fenestris. Oh, that's why it didn't show up because Pentaceratops fenestris has been viewed as an invalid species. And what's also interesting is that the Swedish paleontologist Carl Wienen is who described that specific, um, well, now invalid species of Pentaceratops.
But
So that
nothing's
was
coming up under this.
really.
Yeah.
I'm that's okay. You can just bring up another.
Hold on.
It might there's certain depictions that might possibly depict that Pentaceratops will probably show up. Yeah, I mean this is definitely a pretty good view from the front of a Pentaceratops individual. It could be of the other main species Sternbergi.
What did I do? There it is.
So I don't remember if it was which one of these Sternberg paleontologists specifically described that species. Um, but well, this is an interesting depiction. Gosh, they almost gave him like an eagle, sort of a beak, or maybe even a falcon. I mean, what's also interesting is that ceratopsians are more distantly related to the birds than the long-necked sauropods because birds are members of Saurischiae, and so are the long-necked sauropods, whereas the ceratopsians were members of Ornithischiae. So very much more distantly related to the birds. I would say the issue with this representation is that, first of all, the Tyrannosaurus seems far too short compared to the Pentaceratops with that type of an overall build. It should be towering over the Chasmosaurus, or at least slightly taller than it. But the Pentaceratops in this instance possibly has too long of horns compared to their body size. I think they should also be pointed slightly downwards to an extent. It almost has like a too much of a triceratops sort of a look, or even Torosaurus to an extent. But I think even Torosaurus would have been pointed slightly downwards. The core seems to be okay with, or the Pentaceratops' in this instance. However, it is showing those 2 clawed like, the clawed ring and pinky finger, which should be blunt like that of an alligator. The legs seem okay overall, much shorter forelimbs compared to their hind limbs. Quite a common trait within the Chasmosaur lineage, but even when looking at, different species of centrosaurs, like even I believe like Brachioceratops, but also Centrosaurus, Ionosaurus. It is interesting, like how in some cases closely related the different species of ceratopsids can be, even within the Chasmosaur and Centrosaur lineage. They have very um, distinct physiques, like especially when looking at their horn structures. Some have like when we actually let's bring them up. The Ionosaurus is an interesting medium-sized species of ceratopsian. EIENO. Oh, popped up. I think it would be NIO. So you have certain species like Ionosaurus where it's one large nasal horn and it's pointed very much towards the ground, but also the rear. It's not like certain species where the horn is pointed like diagonally towards the ground. Though in this case, it seems to be with this individual. This is a slightly older model. It's giving him a bit of a more sleek sort of a look. I think many representations with Ionosaurus tend to give it a very bulky sort of a representation. I think also a good example, though it's a bit outdated, is like the Dinosaur Planet, 2001 Dinosaur Planet Ionosaurus. This is he has too many traits. That's who I was thinking of, I think. Possibly a Celoceratops or Chelosaurus. However, Chelosaurus, I believe, has a dome and not necessarily a horn. But this depiction of Ionosaurus has too much of an Chelosaurus look. The horns are far too long compared to the frill size. I also think the frill might be a little small in general. The just having elongated brow horns or brow structures like with what we saw in Brachioceratops and many other species of Centrosaurus in general. I think no, not Pseudoceratops. He has full on horns that actually curve inwards, like sometimes with what you see in certain Highland cattle individuals. What's a good comparison? You can say Cape Buffalo too. It's not hitting me, but many centrosaurs have this. The horn, though, or the nasal horn, is far too thin and extended beyond the skull. So that's far off. When looking at the rest of the body, however, I think the legs in general, at least with that sort of a more sleek type of a build for the core, are a little too robust. They could be slightly more nimble. I just don't think it needs necessarily this broad of a muscle structure for its body size, at least in this instance. This would probably be more realistic for a heavier Ionosaurus individual, or at least one that's not mixed with an Ankylosaurus. But the tail might be okay, but I think there could be more muscle added to the tail and also length for an actual Ionosaurus. Yeah, same thing for this. I think it's just a bit too thin of a frame. But this does seem to be an older reconstruction. He has, unless it's just that area of skin, it seems a bit crooked of a tail. Oh, wait a second. Okay, I might have been mixing this up with another Centrosaur when it just comes to the horn-like structure because now that I'm looking at it, it does share that distinct similarity with Ankylosaurus. So that's interesting. They both have extremely long horns, at least on the top of their frill, compared to other lineages of or other species of Centrosaurs. Sometimes you just forget how specifically long specific horns on the frill are compared to other species. Besides that, yeah, it seems okay. It's probably not a very quick animal, maybe reaching somewhere between 10 to 13 miles per hour at tops, or pushing somewhere around 20 kilometers. And he's probably weighing in at 2.5 to 3 tons, and probably pushing between 18 to 22 feet in length, or around 5.7 to maybe what 6.8 meters. Okay, let's head back to the article. If there was anything else. Oh, okay. So the sharp claw and long neck of Corythoraptor jacobsi may also indicate that its living behavior is perhaps similar to the modern flightless cassowary. This would be an extremely like somewhat unpredictable and aggressive or at least powerful oviraptorid compared to probably a wide variety of other species that were its size or smaller. Do stick any comments in the chat and please like. It seems more reasonable to assume that the cassowary-like crest of Corythoraptor jacobsi was more likely the multifunctional structure that conspicuously expressed fitness and probably sex of each individual of Corythoraptor jacobsi. The discovery of Corythoraptor jacobsi provides unprecedented evidence that oviraptor dinosaurs were morphologically and taxonomically far more diverse in the Gansu area of China than in any other known region in the world. Probably because we find so many in the Gansu region, despite the different species of oviraptorids from this area coming from different parts of the Cretaceous, depending on where you're looking. Okay, well, this was good to go back over. Let's head forward into the Cenozoic era and subscribe. From CBC.ca, caribou herds in British Columbia, Alberta, growing due to wolf calls. Study. Oh boy, let's see what's going on here. Finding puts wildlife managers in a tough spot, co author says, as call remains controversial. So, by the call, it means that they killed some wolves. So, it seems that I'm guessing these are woodland caribou, so a specific subspecies of reindeer or caribou native to Canada and Alaska. There's even a collared one over here. I think these are all females, judging by the size of their antlers, because both the male and female reindeer both carry antlers, despite the subspecies. Yeah. Fresh research suggests Western Canada's once dwindling caribou numbers are finally growing. But the same paper concludes the biggest reason for the rebound is the slaughter of hundreds of wolves. Oh, geez. A policy that will likely have to continue for decades. Sounds like somebody's trying to wipe out the wolves. The question is, how many reindeer are in this area? Where specifically in Alberta and British Columbia? Because this is a huge area. Is this occurring? If we don't shoot wolves, given the state of the habitat that industry and government have allowed, we will lose caribou, said Clayton Lamb, one of 34 co authors of a newly published study in the journal Ecological Applications. It's not the wolves' fault.
How
Okay.
many caribou are there?
Well, it depends on the subspecies that you were referring to and also different herds. We don't know about this specific area, but overall, there's somewhere around 2 million caribou or reindeer. However,
And how
a,
many
s-
wolves are there?
a certain amount are semi domesticated, especially like over in certain areas of Northern Europe and Northern Russia. Wolves, I think there could be somewhere around 150 to 200,000.
Oh, really?
Let's see. So, caribou conservation is considered one of the toughest wildlife management problems on the continent. The animals depicted on the back of the Canadian quarter since 1937 require undisturbed stretches of hard to reach old growth boreal forest. Those same forests tend to be logged or drilled, creating roads and cut lines that invite in deer and moose, along with the wolves that eat anything with hooves. Well, another problem that you can have with white-tailed deer, not really mule deer, but moose in some instances, well, actually many, if they come into contact with reindeer where they shouldn't, but really like the white-tailed deer, is that they can bring in different types of parasites, which that they're immune to, especially the whitetails, but not the reindeer. Between 1991 and 2023, caribou populations dropped by half. Well, the question is where? More than a third of the herds disappeared. Government, scientists, and First Nations have been trying for years to find ways to bring them back. Right, sure. Lamb and his colleagues looked at 40 herds in British Columbia and Alberta to see if anything has worked. The paper suggests caribou numbers have risen by 52% since about 2020 compared with what would have occurred if nothing had been done. There are now 4,500 in the two provinces and about 1,500 more than there would have been. That's it. There's only 4,500. I think this is like a couple years back, but um that's that's almost nothing. There could be some actual good news. It was surprising in a good way. No, it's not. You wiped out like part of the top predators population. You also have the grizzly bears that also feed on them, but grizzly bears, some instances, depending on where they are, tend to be more of like moose or even mule deer predators. Some instances, or I guess white tails, depending on where they are. But yeah, this is not surprising. Yeah, he's just shedding his fur. I don't think he has ticks. And he's growing his antlers in. That's a male. So it's probably like what, May or early June, judging by his antler size. The ranges of some herds are nearly 90% disturbed by industry, and habitat restoration is the preferred solution. But it takes decades for a clear cut or cut line to return to anything like old growth status, so various stopgaps have been used. Because different measures were used on different herds, the researchers could link population trends to interventions. Wolf sterilization didn't work because it couldn't be done on enough of the predators. Yeah, at that rate, you might as well just shoot the wolf. Same with reducing the moose and deer populations that draw wolves into caribou habitat. Yeah, but the problem was is that there are already few woodland caribou wherever this is to start with. But yeah, I think it just can be a bit nuts in some instances for the wolves themselves. So nearly all those populations would have to be killed, an unpopular move in rural and First Nation communities where hunting is both a pastime and necessity. Well, I bet it used to be kind of common. Moose reduction is incredibly controversial. It is. Moving animals from large herds to small helped only for a season or two. What worked, he said, was killing wolves. Is that because they boosted back in population numbers, like from their calves? Wolf reductions alone increased the growth rate of southern mountain caribou subpopulations by about 11%. Wait a second, that sounds much smaller compared to what we were seeing beforehand. It just doesn't sound like a large percentage. That growth rate increased when wolf calls were combined with other measures such as feeding and penning and protecting pregnant cows. Um, well, yeah, that doesn't sound surprising. Wolf reduction was the only recovery action that consistently increased population growth when applied in isolation. Combinations of wolf reductions with maternal penning or supplemental feeding provided rapid growth. No kidding. You're making sure that they're getting in their proper nutrition. The finding puts wildlife managers in tough spot. They're also not going through as much stress. The problem is this would make them less, I would assume, less alert later on when they're released. Shooting wolves to save another species is an incredibly difficult decision.
Talking about the caribou, right?
Um, yeah, when it comes to just
Because
not
they're
being,
worried about other animals coming after them.
yeah, usually that would be the case. They're concerned about brown bears, black bears, cougars, wolves. If we're talking about British Columbia and Alberta, virtually everything. Lynx. So documents obtained almost 2,000 wolves killed since 2015. Documents obtained through a Freedom of Information request showed the British Columbia government has spent more than $10 million in a total of 1,944 wolves had been killed since the province's call was launched in 2015. CBC News revealed in December. This is, I gotta be honest, sad. You almost don't want to care for the reindeer. Wolves are killed by shooters and helicopters who use semi automatic rifles with red dot scopes to target areas that will result in a quick death, according to the documents, which added that follow up shots are sometimes required.
I'm sorry. Do the people writing this know what a semi-automatic means?
Yeah, there are many types of rifles. That's
What a strange way to say something.
that's like saying there were large bipedal dinosaurs roaming the Cretaceous period, but not a specific type of dinosaur. The practice has been described as cruel and inhumane by conservation groups. Well, by a genetic standpoint, you could say that, but um, I would say on the other hand, though, I would think it was just a quick, sort of euthanization, except for apparently the shots that were not directed well. It's just illogical to believe that these killings result in immediate death without any suffering at all. Lawyer Rebecca Breder, who works with Pacific Wild, told CBC News in December. I think that's like Oregon activist group or foundation. Conservation groups say the primary issue facing caribou is human activity and development, and efforts should be directed at habitat conservation rather than killing another wild animal. I mean, you do have it where there's different parts of Canada, despite how rural and just untouched the country might seem. It's like even certain parts of Alaska, there is actually quite a bit of many different regions that have had habitat issues. So, a survey completed by more than 15,000 British Columbia residents in 2021 found 59% of respondents were opposed to predator reduction for caribou recovery, while 37% were in support, according to results published online. Well, this definitely didn't take place in Vancouver. It was probably one of the larger towns in the area. That's actually that's an interesting split. The wolf call is expected to continue through 2026. Whoa! with an annual budget of up to $1.8 million and expected 244 wolves killed every year. Ouch. According to British Columbia's Ministry of Water, Land, and Resource Stewardship. Thank goodness it's over. Okay. Well, that was unfortunate. I do I guess I need to do a recheckup. I'm guessing what this is that this is referring to the smallest reindeer populations within Canada, because I believe they're much larger over in like Labrador or certain parts of Quebec. In fact, I even possibly believe the island of Newfoundland and certain areas of Manitoba. Not so much Saskatchewan, but then also into the Yukon. But yeah, that's actually even northern British Columbia. I think this is possibly towards like the more southern regions that are not too far from northern Idaho, Montana, which we used to have historically. And I'm not referring to the Pleistocene or the Ice Age 12,000 years ago. I'm talking about like back in the past few decades. There were smaller herds of reindeer roaming different areas of like the panhandle of Idaho, northern Washington state, like towards what was it? North Cascades National Park, the Colville National Forest, and I guess like the Kootenai National Forest of Idaho and like the Glacier National Park region. We even had reindeer herds over in northern Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin. I don't know about New England. It certainly is possible, but definitely those regions within the Midwest or the Great Lakes regions that had reindeer. Um.
My turn?
Oh, right. Yep. And do like and subscribe. But yeah, this was it's quite unfortunate, and they're still going. Okay, so from tvbricks.com. Is this one of those stock sites? So it's like I guess in this instance, another Amur leopard, Amur tiger was shot, stocks going up. So from Russia and China combined data on far eastern leopards and Amur tigers for first time. A total of 223 Far Eastern leopards and 147 Amur tigers have been recorded in the transboundary protected area for big cats, confirming the effectiveness of international cooperation. Wait a second. Okay, Far Eastern leopards. I was thinking Amur leopards, completely different subspecies. Uh, I I believe. Because I don't think there are that many Amur leopards at this point, but it certainly is possible. But that is good to see. I mean, they're going back and forth. Russian and Chinese scientists have jointly assessed the global population of the far eastern leopard for the first time. The far eastern leopard is one of the world's rarest predators. The news was reported by the website of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment of the Russian Federation. Within the transboundary protected area for big cats, which connects national parks in the two countries, the survey recorded at least 223 adult Far Eastern leopards and cubs. Of these, 135 were registered in Russia's Land of the Leopard National Park, 115 in China's Northeastern Tiger and Leopard National Park, while 27 individuals regularly cross the state border. Yeah, that's definitely a number of them. This achievement is the result of many years of dedicated work. In the early 2000s, only around 35 Far Eastern leopards remained in the wild worldwide. I think it's referring to Amur leopards. So we now have 223 of them. That's good to see. Let's see. The establishment of Land of the Leopard National Park in 2012 enabled the species to be effectively protected in Russia, leading to a threefold increase in its population. Subsequently, the animals began returning to neighboring provinces of China. Anyway, there was that incident where earlier in the year, because of like a major depletion, supposedly in like the wild boar population or certain deer populations in eastern Russia, tigers are venturing into villages more often. I guess eating people's pets. I haven't seen anything else on that recently. Okay, so let's see. A key milestone was the agreement signed in Beijing on May 16th, 2024, to establish the world's first transboundary protected area for leopards and Amur tigers known as the Big Cats Territory. At the same time, experts analyzed data on the Amur tiger population. A total of 147 adult tigers and cubs were recorded within the protected area, including 21 individuals moving between the two countries. Alexander Koslov, Minister of Natural Resources and Environment of the Russian Federation, stated, "Nature knows no borders. Only through joint efforts can countries protect the populations of the Amur tiger and the far eastern leopard." Sound like he paraphrased was it corridors or pathways for elephants? I forgot what foundation it is over in Botswana, I think. It's like to help create more migrate or enable the space for migratory paths for elephants. So for 2025 to 2026, the two sides approved a cooperation program, held meetings of the Joint Commission, launched the Friendship Leopard Project. That's funny, and organize educational exchange activities for primary and secondary school students. The program also includes international ranger competitions, joint scientific research, and the development of cross border tourism. Zhu Shaibing from the Institute of Natural Resources and Ecology of the Heilongjiang Academy of Sciences noted that combining image data from both countries would make conservation measures more targeted and effective. So in 2010, the International Tiger Forum Tiger Summit held in St. Petersburg established International Tiger Day to draw attention to the decline in tiger populations and explore ways of protecting endangered species. The BRICS countries have consistently supported research and practical initiatives aimed at restoring tiger and leopard populations. In recent years, China has significantly expanded the number of its national parks and enlarged its protected area system.
Okay, all I was going after were the numbers.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. So in the northeast China Tiger and Leopard National Park, the number of Amur tigers increased from 27 in 2017 to 72.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's an increase. While the far eastern leopard population rose from 42 to 115. No, what in that year?
No, they
I
had to be finding. They just weren't seeing them.
Yeah, more than double the original estimate, 42 to 115. Okay, now it's mentioning India. Why do they always throw him into this? Or it? Let's see. Yeah, now Sumatra gets thrown in, of course. Okay, well, it seems that's it for
Oh,
that. I mean, it's good to hear that they're both going up in population. I am concerned about what's going on in that other area, like where supposedly there's less deer and boars. Here another one. I just like to keep like these, especially when it comes to the wolves for others. Okay. So from new
no way.
Yep.
Ah, my fault. Uh,
What? No, this isn't a news one.
Well, I think I'm out.
Okay, so we're just going to give everyone a minute to put any comments into the chat. So, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is CreatureCon Live Daily News. We are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. Happy International Ionosaurus Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.